Nobody could use a win in the quarterfinals more than James Franklin.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the NFL regular season action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Indiana has got its new starter for 2025. I'm lukewarm, shall we say. Not cold, but lukewarm. And Auburn is very much all in, or at least that's the way it appears for 2025. All coming up on today's show. But let's start with James Franklin. So Franklin has had this narrative, this label, this tag that's just kind of stuck to him. Someone came up and, played a joke, put a kick me sign on the back of him that says, "I can't win big games against great teams." But he wins a lot of football games against teams that most of us wouldn't consider great. And going into the SMU game, bet you a lot of you thought that it was going to be closer than it actually was. Well, he doesn't get any credit for that. He doesn't get any sort of additional respect for that game. So you know something about James Franklin, but what you don't know is, does he have a breakthrough moment? Is that season in which we finally just completely shuck like an ear of corn all these narratives and all the preconceived notions we had about James Franklin? Does he have that win coming around the corner? Well, we can't learn that against Boise State this week. And this is why he can't lose. Because try as he might to convince the public, if he were asked about it, that he doesn't hear this narrative or he doesn't hear the noise here with this, that, and the other thing. And maybe he's very straight up and honest about it. I haven't asked him about it super recently. But they hear. Coaches hear. And as much as anything, even if coaches, shun the narrative or the outside noise, block it out, get rid of it, don't have it here, it still lingers around the program because fans talk. Fans read comments and fans listen to shows like this one or others. And so then it hangs, and you can sense the tension in certain moments. In that Ohio State game, there was almost an inevitability feeling. James Franklin felt it too amongst fan base of, oh boy, here we go again. Ohio State can't get over that hump, not since 2016. So if you then go into this game against Boise State, and it's a neutral site, not a home game, that's different, to be sure, in the Fiesta Bowl. But if you do that as a pretty sizable favorite, and then you lose that one, it's just going to keep spiraling. It's just going to get even worse. I don't think James Franklin gets fired if he loses to Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, but I don't think he does himself any favors if he loses, because Penn State fans, after seeing the draw they got following the Big Ten championship game loss to Oregon, I think Penn State fans on the whole were feeling pretty good. Heck, I felt better about Penn State after the Big Ten championship game. I thought, man, they played really well against the only undefeated team in college football. And now they have this draw where, well, they should do all this, and James Franklin, well, he wins the games that he should win. That's why my confidence in Penn State, as I'm recording the show, it's pretty solidly high. So I think for the Nittany Lions, the fans would like to have the opportunity to get that big win, to get the game. You don't have to win a national championship, but whoever you'd end up meeting in the semifinals, be it Georgia or Notre Dame, that qualifies as big game, big team, big win. It'd be the biggest win James Franklin has had in quite some time because he didn't beat Michigan when they were at their peak. Didn't play Michigan this year. Hasn't beaten Ohio State since 2016. Lost to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Penn State doesn't have to win the national championship for Nittany Lion fans to feel better about James Franklin, but he has to win this game in order to gain that opportunity, because a home win against SMU That's not going to cut it. They've seen that. Fans have seen that story before up there in Happy Valley. They know what that looks and feels like because they've seen it over and over, and it's why. I was having a conversation with a friend recently. He said, why does James Franklin still have his job at Penn State? Because he's a really good coach? Yeah, but he doesn't win this. Well, he wins every game that he is supposed to, and not every coach can say that. Lincoln Riley at USC, lest I name others, Brian Kelly at LSU. Like, there are plenty of coaches who don't do what they are supposed to do. So, what you may have been thinking throughout the course of this segment is, what about Ryan Day? And of course I thought about Ryan Day. The difference is that James Franklin needs the opportunity to get into that semifinal game, I think, more than Ryan Day does. Because Ohio State fans, the questions that they have surrounding the Buckeyes head coach is, what does he do in these big games? What does he do against these great teams? Where are the good wins? I don't know how you can slice and dice home or away or neutral. I don't care. He just took a top 10 team to the woodshed. So if Ryan Day goes out and loses to Oregon again, and it's a close competitive game, which I expect it to be, you can't radically shift your opinion of Ryan Day because of that. You can radically shift your opinion one way or the other on James Franklin if they make their way to the semifinals and have a chance to then go to the national championship game. But Ohio State fans, I don't think they should be changing their stance on Ryan Day, whether you think he should be the head coach after this year or not, if they lose a close game to Oregon. Oregon fans didn't change their position on Dan Lanning last year after losing a pair of tight games to Washington and Kalen DeBoer. They said, man, that Washington team was really good. Man, that Kalen DeBoer guy, he seems to be a really good football coach. You don't bail on a head coach after that. Now, Ryan Day's been at Ohio State longer than Dan Lanning has been at Oregon, granted. And for some Ohio State fans, there is that inevitability of you either win this national championship or I don't want you to be the head coach anymore. I'm not in that particular camp because I think Ryan Day is really good. You understand that in his career, he's a 50-yard field goal away from winning the national championship in all likelihood? That's it. One field goal, one play. Does Kirby Smart get that timeout in time? He just did in that playoff game a couple of years ago to stop the fake punt, or else maybe Ohio State wins the football game. Ryan Day has proven himself capable of getting to that level more than James Franklin has. That is why Franklin needs a win in this quarterfinal game to give himself that opportunity more than Ryan Day does. If you believe differently, by all means, let's bicker in the YouTube comments like civilized folk here in 2024. Everyone's using the transfer portal because that's what cool kids do. Indiana, cool kid, transfer portal. Fernando Mendoza, it's fine. I'll tell you why I'm not wild about that addition coming up next. First, let's talk about Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Rocket Money is making it easy to track these things down to save you money and get your finance decisions onto the railroad tracks full steam ahead, just like one of the remaining 8 teams is going to be here in the college football playoff by the time it all comes to a close. And one of the best features is easily the subscription tracker. Subscriptions are everywhere. They're out of control, and Rocket Money makes sure you're not wasting money on them. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So Indiana's got their new quarterback. At least that's how it seems. And it's Fernando Mendoza from Cal. It's fine. Mendoza went for over 3,000 yards in 11 games this year. 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just a shade under 70% completion. Efficient, effective, the highlight of Cal's season was Mendoza looking like a borderline Heisman finalist in week 2 down at Jordan-Hare Stadium to pull an upset of the Auburn Tigers. They were 12.5-point dogs. Just a quick reminder for anybody out there who's in the camp of, well, why have these games if they're double-digit point spreads? That means the wrong teams were in. Double-digit point spreads have been winning all year as underdogs, so it's just going back a long time in this particular season. But Cal also went 0-4 this year against Power 4 teams with winning records. And in those games, Mendoza had 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. His yardage was fine. He had at least 225 in all of them. But this is not a reclamation project of sorts for Mendoza, where you look at a guy like Jackson Arnold going to Auburn or Bo Nix going from Auburn to Oregon. Those guys were leaving situations where they weren't the most well-supported to go to places where they're better supported. For Bo Nix, it worked out. We'll see what happens with Jackson Arnold. More on him later on today's show. But for Mendoza, did they have a great offensive line? No. But he had a dynamic playmaker at running back in Jaden Ott. And he had a couple of really capable receivers, including Isaiah Hunter, but not limited to Isaiah Hunter, of course. Maven Anderson was pretty solid. This is a guy who has started for Cal the last couple of years. He's had good wideouts. Has not had great offensive lines. That can improve relative to what he's had. But this is not somebody that screams Kurtis Rourke to me for that reason, given the production we've seen. He's incredibly capable. He will put up plenty of yards in this offense. I don't know that he comes in and lights the world on fire. Now, that's dependent, of course, of what Indiana is able to put around him at wide receiver and, how their offensive staff is able to survive the loss of their co-offensive coordinators going to UCLA. I'm sure they'll be fine with all of those things. Google Curt Cignetti. He's won everywhere he's been. But there was a joke that's oddly fitting going around the interweb that went something like this. Fernando Mendoza is perfect for Indiana because his least productive games come against top 25 opponents. Well, best competition, worst performances. Yes, that's kind of fit. That's not the biggest reason, though, why I am lukewarm on this. And I want to make this clear. I know this sounds very down. I don't expect Mendoza to go to Indiana and they regress to being a 3-9, 4-8 team. No. Nothing like that. Mendoza went to back-to-back bowl games. He didn't play in this year's bowl game for Cal, of course, because he had hit the portal for one reason or the other. And he went to back-to-back bowl games at Cal. So the guy can play football and win you games. And he'll be more well-supported over at Indiana. Here's what I wonder about. I've watched plenty of Fernando Mendoza. Solid voice crack there. I've watched plenty. I hope Sean McDonough is listening. Or watching. I don't care. Either way. I've watched plenty of Fernando Mendoza playing football. He does not have a huge arm. Kurtis Rourke's arm, solid. I watched Mendoza. He's a touch below that. He's accurate. He is not pushing the ball deep down the field consistently. He is coming from an RPO-heavy offense over at Cal. And he is migrating towards an offense in Indiana whose specialty was the back shoulder fade. Now, it's not like he can't throw that ball. It's just not what he was thriving at his previous stop. So you're going to learn a new offensive system. You're going to work with new teammates. But your play style is going to change in that respect. And then you factor in the cold weather that you face at Indiana and in the Big Ten writ large. You go to some cold environments over the course of the season. The last time Fernando Mendoza played in some really, Cal fans can correct me if I missed a weather game in here, but last time he played in tough weather conditions, it was raining and cold at Oregon last year. Cal put up 19 points. And he had a couple of turnovers in the game. He doesn't have a huge arm to overcome those. One of the teams that he was looking at that I thought was a much better fit for this reason was UCLA, who surprised me this year and brings an offensive coordinator from Indiana. I thought they'd be a 3-win team. They're a 5-win team. Feels like they've got some momentum. They have a top 25 transfer portal class right now. I think they've made a good hire at offensive coordinator. They played their best football at the end of the year. That's what well-coached teams seem to do. Maybe Deshaun Foster's out there to prove me wrong. I thought that would fit pretty well for Mendoza because then in November he's playing home games and he's in 50 degrees, not 15 degrees in certain games in the Big Ten. So I'm not crazy about this addition. Now, I talked about Indiana earlier this week on the show, and if you missed it, what Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers and I discussed is whether or not Indiana gets back to the playoff next year. And when we taped that segment at the time, Mendoza had not committed to Indiana. It was still a wild card. Well, what transfer could they go get? Who are they going to get available? They had their backup, who I thought showed some promise in the time that he played this past season. He started against Washington. They won the game 31-17 against a respectable 6-6 Washington squad. And I saw him and thought, I think that could work. Well, no, he hits the portal. They want to bring in Mendoza, go the experience route. They're not the first program to go down that particular path. But when I think about the schedule Indiana has, remember, they have to go at Iowa, at Penn State, at Oregon. Okay, even if you brought back Kurtis Rourke, they weren't winning all three of those games. Now that you go from Rourke to Mendoza, I think that's a slight downgrade. Indiana's still going to be, I expect, in the 7 to 8, maybe 9 win range. Maybe they can get to 10, but 10 to me feels like their ceiling, especially with Mendoza at quarterback. And I don't know that 10-2 is a lock to be a playoff team. Because if your losses are to Penn State and Oregon, your wins at Iowa, and that's your best win on the schedule, with a weak non-conference slate, I don't see the playoff committee putting them in. They left Miami out. They left BYU out. Those were 10-2 Power 4 teams. They were in different conferences. But a weak Big Ten schedule there, that's going to translate very similarly to what Miami and BYU suffered at the end of the season this year, which is they weren't even really in the running. So Mendoza to me is not a needle mover. He's someone who is incredibly capable. You can win games with him. We have seen that aplenty. I expect him to be better at Indiana statistically and more productive than he was at Cal. Fully on board with that. I do not expect him to be a guy that takes Indiana to the playoff through that schedule. Through 2 seasons, I have not seen the big game production to think that he's going to be able to get in those environments. He doesn't have a huge arm. They're going to battle some cold weather games. I think that's a tough proposition. If you think I'm crazy, you just let me know in the comments below. That's how this wonderful arrangement works. Here's how the arrangement works at Auburn. Hugh Freeze is going to win in 2025 or be fired. That's coming up next. First reminder, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Do you realize how great of a deal that is? Well, it's right there for you at FanDuel.com. You can also bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points a team will score, who's going to win the game by how many points. It's all over there at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Yeah, $250 bonus bets. $5 bet, correct. Just like that. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Auburn is all in for 2025, as they should be. There is no reason that program shouldn't be all in every single year. First season under Hugh Freeze, fine. 6 wins, lose a bowl game, all right, it's all good. The regression this year, when many like myself expected a progression, that's disappointing. That's concerning. It's not alarm bell central yet because Hugh Freeze is recruiting well. Hugh Freeze is adding players in the transfer portal. His latest addition is Eric Singleton Jr. This is a phenomenal ad. Per 24/7's rankings, and I'm sure other people would see it this way as well, he was the best wide receiver available in the transfer portal. You know why? He had 700 yards this year through the air. Oh, by the way, through the air, obvious receiver, duh, not a quarterback. He had 700 yards receiving his first season of college football too. Georgia Tech transfer, they didn't even throw the football a ton. That's a run-centric team. He's been their go-to guy. He's now an Auburn Tiger. So I love this for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're bringing in a young, unproven quarterback, but talented in Jackson Arnold, who you are staking your job on if you are Hugh Freeze. He does not have major job security going into next year. I thought they should have gone after a veteran. Malik Murphy winds up at Oregon State instead. Go figure. So he's going with a young guy. He's going with the Bo Nix approach. All the hype in the world. He was going to be great at his previous stop. It didn't work out for this reason, that reason, or another one, or 17 others in between. Now he makes his way, and if you get him to pop, everyone is reassured that you're going to be able to steer the program in the right direction. But right now, everything good about Auburn football is on paper. Singleton is another good move on paper, without question. Because a guy who has been that productive for a program run by Brent Key that wants to run the ball, as he famously said after Florida State, that's a lot of productivity. There is untapped potential there. Another reason that I like this move is Auburn loses Keandre Lambert-Smith because he's out of eligibility after however many years of college football it's been. It's been a while, but he was a big get for Auburn last year in the transfer portal. He was not the problem with the Auburn offense. That was Peyton Thorne for the first half of the year. Then in the second half of the year, you saw, they beat Texas A&M. Where was that in the first half of the season? That's what Auburn fans are still asking themselves and hoping going into next year that they're going to be able to figure it out before you stack up a bunch of losses and end up not making a bowl game. Keandre Lambert-Smith this past year, 50 catches, 981 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That's a lot to replace. But Hugh Freeze has now set up 2025 to be a no excuses kind of year. This is what this move screams to me. Maybe they could still add another guy here, another guy there, but this is year 3. With the way he's recruited, they have a top 4 transfer portal class, according to 24/7 Sports. They brought in a great transfer portal class last year. They have recruited well, as in top 10 sort of level, each of the last couple of cycles. There are no more excuses here. Hugh Freeze, you're an offensive guy? Are you quarterback whisperer sort of guy? Well, you better showcase it. And you can't look around and say there isn't talent because Cam Coleman, as advertised for that Auburn offense. I mean, the true freshman wide receivers in college football this year, they were off. They were incredible. They were somehow better than I thought they'd be. And I'm talking Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman, Jeremiah Smith, all of them. Immediate, instant impact, arguably the best receiver on their respective teams. So you bring Cam Coleman back, and you had him paired with Keandre Lambert-Smith, boom, Eric Singleton Jr. That, to me, feels like a one-to-one replacement on the perimeter, to where you can't look at Jackson Arnold and say, well, he doesn't have anyone to throw the football to. Unless both of those guys go down, Singleton has proven to you he can be a number 1 caliber receiver. You know that Cam Coleman can, so even if one of them goes down, you still have a top target on the perimeter. But if you have both of them there, you've got a high-end receiving core. You've got the foundation of an offense that should be more than sufficient to get you back in the 8-9 win range and build, again, for the future where Jackson Arnold could still be your quarterback and Cam Coleman could still be your number 1 receiver. And heck, Eric Singleton Jr. could still be your number 2 receiver. This could be a combination of guys, Arnold to Coleman, Arnold to Singleton, and just revolve that door that sustains Auburn's offense for the next 2 years and propels the floor on that program back up to where the Tigers would like it to be. So I love this move, but if Auburn misses a bowl game for a second straight year, you will have an SEC job opening in Auburn, Alabama. No doubt in my mind. And I don't think that you could even argue, well, no, he should get it. No, by the 3rd year, you got to be able to right the ship. You got to be able to turn it around. But this is the sort of move that allows for that. So the pressure meter on Hugh Freeze should be as high as it is on any coach in all of college football next year. We'll let the entire offseason settle, and we'll circle back to this question. What's the minimum number of wins to keep your job? Last year for Billy Napier, I felt it was 5. In the regular season, he got to 7. He keeps his job. Obviously. Even though early in the year, people like myself are saying, I think you got to get rid of this guy. Nope, he's still hanging around. What's the number going to be for Hugh Freeze? I know it's at least 6. Does 6-6 get you fired? Maybe not, but 6-6 makes people go, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right thing. Speaking of portal additions for pass catchers, I just wanted to note this one. Caleb Odom was the number 2 tight end in the class of 2024. He only had 7 catches this year at Alabama. They didn't use their tight ends a whole lot in the offense. It's never really been Kalen DeBoer's MO to use the tight ends a ton, but Caden Prescorn was the number 5 receiver, yardage-wise, for Ole Miss this year, and Lane Kiffin. Odom is a mega talent. Remember what I just said? Number 2 tight end in all of 2024. 7 catches for 65 yards. Let's call that not maximizing your full potential. This is the tight end version of Micah Hudson to Texas A&M. All of the talent that was evaluated and gave him a big ranking that had all the stars there, and Odom was just short of 5-star status. That talent is still in there. It's just that his first stop wasn't able to find the right key to open the box. Well, Lane Kiffin uses the tight end at least some. The first 4 guys that were ahead, yeah, they're probably going to be a similar position dispersion where it's mostly wide receivers, but I just wonder if a guy who wasn't hardly involved in Alabama's offense this year didn't go choose an offensive mind like Lane Kiffin in the SEC because he doesn't believe that, hey, I can be a number 1 tight end sort of option who finishes with 600 to 700 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. I can be that sort of guy, and I think Lane Kiffin's that sort of guy. Just keep your eye on that one. That's all. I think Eric Singleton Jr., I know Eric Singleton is a far more impactful transfer as a pass catcher in the SEC. Just keep your eye on Odom as well. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.